All right, let's dive into a book that has, no exaggeration, changed millions of lives. Atomic Habits by James Clear. Its core idea is super simple but incredibly powerful. Real, lasting change doesn't come from some massive, heroic effort. Nope, it comes from the compounding effect of hundreds of tiny, almost invisible decisions. Let's get into it. So where does this whole philosophy come from? You might think it started in a fancy research lab, but you'd be wrong. It all began with a moment of pure, shocking trauma. That's James Clear's own story. A baseball bat, swung by a classmate, slipped and hit him right between the eyes. We're talking a severe brain injury, multiple skull fractures, an accident that almost killed him. Now, his recovery wasn't some Hollywood movie montage. It was slow, and it was brutal. He was in a medically induced coma. He spent months just relearning basic things, like how to walk in a straight line. But a couple years later, when he got to college, he didn't focus on some grand comeback. He focused on the tiny stuff, keeping his room clean, getting to bed on time, developing better study habits. And this is the whole point. 6 years after that horrible accident, he was named the top male athlete at his university. Not from one big push, but through this slow, gradual evolution. A long, long series of very small wins. That whole journey taught him something absolutely fundamental, and it's the bedrock of this entire book. The truly surprising, almost magical power of getting just a tiny bit better every single day. 1%. That's the number. It sounds like nothing, right? It's so small you'd barely even notice it. But James Clear argues that this little number is probably the single most important one for anyone who actually wants to improve their life. And here's where that tiny 1% gets kind of mind-bending. The math is just staggering. If you can manage to get just 1% better every single day for a year, the compound effect means you end up 37 times better than when you started. But, and this is crucial, it works both ways. If you get 1% worse each day, one bad choice, one shortcut, it erodes everything and you end up at nearly zero. You see, habits are the compound interest of self-improvement. And look, this isn't just some nice theory. Take the British cycling team. For a century, they were just, okay, nothing special. Then, in 2003, they brought in a guy named Dave Brailsford. His strategy, the aggregation of marginal gains. They just tried to improve everything by 1%. And I mean everything. They found slightly more comfortable bike saddles. They tested different massage gels. They hired a surgeon to teach the athletes how to wash their hands properly to avoid getting sick. They even painted the inside of their team truck white, just so they could spot tiny bits of dust that might mess with the bikes. The result of all these tiny things? In just one decade, they won 178 world championships and 66 Olympic gold medals. It was insane. So if this 1% thing is so powerful, why do we give up so easily? Well, it's because of something called the plateau of latent potential. We all expect progress to be this nice, straight line, right? But it's not. The results are often delayed. Clear uses this amazing analogy of an ice cube. Imagine an ice cube in a room that's at -4 degrees. You raise the temperature to -3, nothing happens. -2, still an ice cube. But then you hit 0 degrees and bam, you get this massive change. All that earlier work wasn't wasted. It was just storing up potential. The problem is most of us quit right here in what he calls the valley of disappointment, just before we hit our breakthrough. So getting past that plateau, it requires a totally different way of thinking. And this leads us to what I think is the most profound idea in the entire book. True, lasting behavior change isn't about what you do, it's about who you are. He explains this with 3 layers, kind of like an onion. On the outside, you have your outcomes. That's the what you get, like losing weight. The next layer in is your process. That's the how, what you do, like going to the gym. But the deepest layer, the core, that's your identity. That's the who, what you believe about yourself. Now, most of us try to change from the outside in. We focus on the result we want, but that's totally backwards, and it almost never sticks. The real key, the most effective way to change, is to work from the inside out. You have to start by asking yourself, who is the type of person who could get the result I want? You focus on becoming that person, and believe me, the results will just follow. Let me give you a perfect example from the book. Imagine someone offers you a cigarette. The person focused on outcomes says, "No thanks, I'm trying to quit." See what that implies? It implies they're still a smoker and they're fighting this temptation. But the person focused on identity, they say, "No thanks, I'm not a smoker." For them, it's not a struggle. It's just a statement of fact. The change has already happened in their mind. Every single action you take is like a vote for the type of person you want to become. When you put on your shoes and go for a run, even a short one, you're casting a vote for I am a runner. The goal isn't the one-time achievement. It's about embedding that new identity. That's what makes it last. Okay, so if changing our identity is the why, then these 4 laws are the how. This is the practical step-by-step part of the book, the manual for actually designing the habits you want. Here's the whole framework. To build a good habit, you make it. First, obvious. Put your running shoes right by the front door. Second, attractive. Maybe you only let yourself listen to your favorite podcast when you're on your run. Third, easy. Don't start by trying to run 5 miles. Start by just running for 2 minutes. Seriously. And fourth, satisfying. Track your runs on a calendar. Give yourself that little visual win. And if you want to break a bad habit, you just flip it all upside down. Make it invisible, unattractive, difficult, and unsatisfying. These are the 4 levers you can pull to totally re-engineer your own behavior. This brings us to the final and really critical mindset shift. If you truly want to make progress, you have to stop being so obsessed with your goals and start focusing on something completely different. So what's wrong with goals? I know, it sounds weird, but think about it. First, winners and losers often have the exact same goals. Every athlete in the Olympics wants a gold medal, right? So the goal itself isn't what makes the difference. Second, hitting a goal is just a temporary change. Yeah, you cleaned your messy room, great. But if you don't fix the sloppy system that made it messy in the first place, it's gonna be a disaster again next week. And finally, goals postpone happiness. You're always telling yourself, I'll finally be happy when I reach this goal, which means you're basically living in a constant state of failure until you get there. This line right here is maybe the most powerful quote in the entire book. Goals are about the results you want. Systems are about the processes that lead to those results. The goal might set the direction, but it's the system that actually gets you there. And that's really the core difference. A goal is a finish line. Once you cross it, what happens? Your motivation often just evaporates. But a system? A system has no finish line. If your system is to be a runner, you just keep running. You're not trying to win just one game, you're building a way to keep playing forever. And that's really the big takeaway from all of this. It's not about some massive, painful life overhaul. It's about those small, atomic changes that build on each other and lead to incredible results. So the question isn't how you can change your entire life by tomorrow. It's much simpler. It's just this. What is one tiny, 1% improvement you can make to your system starting today?